So today we're here with
Peggy Bueker,
Peggy. Who are your parents?
Freddie and Madonna Geckner.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I am the 11th of 12 children.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. Do you want me to name them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Kenny, Jeannie, Marjorie, Dennis, Rose, Kirk, Karen, Vicky, Peggy, Joyce.
That was quick.
I'm able to do that because as a kid, at night you say your prayers and you pray for everyone in your family.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. Do you talk about your family and your kids?
So I'm married to Scott Bueker, and we live on the dairy farm that his parents have had in their family, and we have 5 children. We were blessed with twins 9 months after we were married, Brock and Brant, and they're now 20, and then Sadie is 19, Hope is 16, gonna be 17, and Nora is 9.
Does sports play a key role in your family?
Growing up, my dad was not a big sports fan. My mom was, and very, very competitive, and we got our competitiveness from our mom. But because we had so many kids in our family, we always had enough to play like a pickup softball game in our side yard or play basketball with my brothers and sisters. So yes and no, I guess. For some reason, it's something that I engaged in early and had a lot of interest in, probably more so than anyone else in my family.
Where did you attend high school and what year did you graduate?
I went to Altamont High School and I graduated in 1989.
What sports did you play in high school?
I played all 3. Started the year playing volleyball, and then in the winter basketball, and then in the spring softball.
Talk about your high school sports career from your freshman to senior year, including your teammates and your coaches.
So my freshman year started with volleyball. We had a new coach come into town. Not familiar with our community. Her name was Corey Larson, and my sister Vicky was a senior, and those practices started before school started. So I would travel to practice with my sister, and she would let me be in their groups when they were doing drills and things like that. And so I really think the new coach didn't know how old I was, and I got put in with that group all the time once we got to school. And probably because of my sister Vicky, I got to, I played and started as a freshman in volleyball, and then in basketball we didn't have very many kids play, so again I got to play a lot then, and then so forth with softball too. So my freshman year got started the way it did because of my sister Vicky.
Really?
So
talk about some of the teams and players you had the pleasure to play against in high school.
Team-wise, for us, our Altamont's team when I went through school, where we were always good and competitive and had winning records, but we could never get over the hump. And I always told people when I went to college, I said, well, when I went to school, volleyball, we had 2 straws go through the same years that I was. And I don't know if you remember back then, but that's when Laura Bush played and Kim and Carla Fries, and their teams won multiple state championships. And that's who was in our conference. We had to play against them to get out of the postseason. And then in the winter, obviously, we had to play T-Town and regionals. And I talk about what I played my freshman year against Doris Zeruzen and Doris Carey back then, and Sandy Brown Michaels now, who as a freshman blocked my shot. I learned a lot playing against competition like that, being young. But then they obviously won state championships when I was going through high school. And then you go in our spring season in softball, we were pretty decent too, but there's a team named Casey, had a coach named Danny Thornburg that had some really quality teams that won state. So I think our teams were always good, but I never got to experience any real postseason success in college.
Where were some of your favorite facilities to play in high school?
My favorite place to play was any place I did not have to sweep rocks off the floor and had a basket at each end, because growing up on the farm where we did, and there might be implements, I just appreciated the chance to get to play anywhere, that there was an actual court or field that had bases and things like that. So I think that grounded me a little bit, and I try to still think that I don't take that for granted, that we have that opportunity to do so.
Any memories you'd like to add during your high school career?
Not really. I like playing, you talk about facilities. ACHS is a really neat gym, and people like to come there and play. But the memories are probably just with the people and the teammates and the things you shared, not just on the court, but all the times that you share off the court, because you're with each other a lot.
Any awards you received in high school?
At the end of the year, the sports banquet, yeah, but that's been over 30 years ago, so I can't tell you which ones. So
So after high school, where'd you go to college and who recruited you?
I was recruited by most of the junior colleges around here, and then Millikan, I went for a visit, and Quincy. Actually, I had was going to verbal commit with Quincy, and then I got one day at school, I got called to the office, and my coach at that time, Monica Hall, had just fielded a phone call from Pittsburgh State University and was interested in me coming for a visit, and that wheels got turning and changed my mind, and after my visit there, then that's where I chose to go.
Where's Pittsburgh State at?
It's in Pittsburgh, Kansas. It's 30 miles west of Joplin, Missouri.
Wow, that's a long drive.
It was 6 hours, yeah. So, but probably the reason I went there is with the recruit visit that I had and how well it went and the people that are there.
So kind of at the time being in college at Pittsburgh State, talk about your career, including your teammates and coaches.
So my college coach was the first year when he got there. That's kind of the connection how he knew me is because he came from the University of Nebraska. He was the assistant coach there and then just took the job at Pittsburgh State. I had gone to camp at University of Nebraska between my junior and senior year. So Coach High was new, and he had a few of his recruits, me being one of them, and then he had a lot of kids that were left over from before him, and they weren't real successful. So my freshman and sophomore year, we weren't that good. I put on a quote that I had in my yearbook from them saying that, we transitioned from a team my freshman and sophomore year. I remember showing up hour and a half before a game, and you just kind of know that, we're going to get beat. To my juniors and senior years, showing up knowing we were gonna win, and that's because it just took a couple years for him to get kids that he wanted in there and a group of people that worked really well together, and we went from one of the worst in the conference to winning the conference.
So kind of talk about some of the teams and players you got to play against.
So most of the teams that we played, it's a Division II school. So within our conference, probably the best teams are teams that were year in, year out. The most competitive was Washburn University, Emporia State, and then Central Missouri State too. Missouri Southern was our biggest rival, and they're in Joplin, and they're a rival because they're 30 minutes away. And the funny story with that is I don't know if you know, that's where Rich Voorhees went to play.
Oh wow!
For his junior and senior. So when I see him, I always razz him that the Gorillas are better than Missouri Southern. So,
describe your favorite facilities in college.
Well, really all of them. A small town kid go in there and you walk into a facility and maybe they're changing it they just had a rodeo one night before and now they're putting all the flooring down and stuff like that for basketball. I mean, probably Central Missouri was the biggest arena that we played in. Our facility at Pitt State was okay. It was nice as well. The neatest thing with that was when we hosted the NCAA tournament because the year that we won the conference, then we had an at-large bid into the NCAA tournament. So
that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Any awards you received in college?
I'm sure something, but not anything that I need to tell anybody about.
So Peggy, after college, what did you end up doing?
So after my 4 years, I got my degree in physical education and biology with the total intent of wanting to stay and coach college basketball. So Coach High in the PE department offered me the grad assistant position. So I actually stayed for my 5th year and was the GA for a team, and I was recruited and did some scouting and things like that for other teams. So I stayed there and got my master's. And then, unfortunately, right at that time is when the NCAA made changes in how many bench personnel you could have, and they decreased the numbers. So, I sent out, 50 to 100 applications to go to, try to get on at a university and be on the coaching staff for their women's basketball team, and it just didn't happen. And at that same time, Coach Hall left at Altamont, and I got a phone call from my mom saying, "Hey, why don't you come home and apply for that job?" So I did, and at the time I'm thinking, yeah, I will, but I'm only going to do it for a couple of years because I want to be a college basketball coach. never thought that I would stay, and now I think this is like my 26th year at Altamont, and I wouldn't change it, no regrets.
So what kind of teacher were you at Altamont?
I taught PE and biology throughout my career, all PE at the beginning and then biology towards the end.
So combining those years, how long were you a teacher and everything at Altamont?
At Altamont.
As far as, yeah, at
just
Altamont.
as a teacher, 24 years I think it was that I taught at Altamont.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, you're the athletic director at Altamont High School. Talk about the process of becoming the AD.
Something I always wanted or thought I would want to do, but did not want it to happen the way it did. Unfortunately, because of the tragic accident of Todd Arnold a couple years ago, I got to step in as the interim. So for the last few months of that school year, I was the interim athletic director, and then got hired on as the assistant principal and athletic director, and I've been that the last 2 years full time.
I remember you telling me how excited you were to get that job.
I was, very much so. I had big visions of what I wanted to do for Altamont and the student athletes that we have.
You do a terrific job with your job too, Peggy.
Well, thank you.
So I wanted to ask you, what are your duties as an athletic director?
So the obvious of like scheduling games and officials and things like that. If we host tournaments, getting things organized for that. I've really, in the last 2 years, really tried working with my coaches, and a shout out to all of them. I think Altamont, we have a good staff, coaching staff, that all have a vision of having high expectations for their players and their teams, and so working with them side by side and asking them what they want, where they see their teams going, and hopefully making some changes. We've changed our schedules for almost every one of our teams a lot in the last 2 years, and with the whole idea we want to be successful in the postseason. We're not trying to be undefeated during the regular season. We want to try to make a trip to the state tournament. Describe any obstacles involved in your AD job. Maybe just the obvious of like when there's restrictions because of, IHSA, and I know that they have to have the rules that they have, and this, especially here now with the whole out of school and out of play time, and trying to balance that and still do what's right for kids, but then still giving them opportunities that I think it's important for them to get. And during that time, it's kind of been actually a blessing, because I feel like with my role as athletic director and assistant principal during school time, I do a lot of principal stuff. And then the athletic director stuff usually happens after hours. And it's just allowed me a lot of time to get things organized. And one of the things for me with athletic director, I like to get everything to a point where we're 4 years out and we're not quite there, but we're getting a lot closer, and probably because of this time that I've had to do that, because there's not been sports going on. So,
so what do you enjoy so much about your job, Peggy?
Definitely the people, young from young people that participate to the coaches and the athletic directors, that, and just trying to give kids an opportunity to succeed. So whatever we could, I feel like that's my job. What can I do, or, to help our teams and our coaches have success, the success that they're wanting to have. So, and getting to see that, the best part of my job is going to watch games. So then that's the easy part. I don't ever mind. People always say, well, gosh, you're at a lot of games or whatever. I really enjoy that.
Who's helped you along the way?
From the very get-go, I would have to say my family. Unless you're just talking about as far as being an
people at school and your family, yeah.
In my role as athletic director, my family does, because they just allow me to be flexible and know that I'm just not going to be around a lot of the times. But otherwise, all the other athletic directors, I've made numerous mistakes in the last 2 years when it comes to athletic directors. I've had, as the athletic director, I've had to, email or call and say, you know what, I screwed up. But I would have made a heck of a lot more if it wasn't for, Ryan Becky, who has a lot of experience and years in the NTC and bouncing questions off of him, and same way with Kevin Palmer at St. Anthony, Lori Thompson at T-Town, Craig Carr at Newton. So I'm fortunate to have the athletic director group that I have around me that I know that if I needed something or had a question, I can call and ask them.
We're fortunate to have good people like that. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
So describe being an AD and watching your kids play at the same time.
It's still all good because I get to watch. A lot of people have said if we, there's been a few times where Altamont does play T-Town, and who am I rooting for? Well, it's no different than any other game that I watch. I root for kids. I root for kids, any kid, no matter what color uniform they have on, make good plays, make good decisions and things like that. So, I'm also fortunate at Altamont. They give me the flexibility and the permission that if I want to go watch one of my own kids' games, someone else will cover for me for a game that Altamont is having. So it hasn't been difficult. I just get to do what I love, and that's one of the things, and that is watching kids play.
I had to ask you this question. So describe the NTC week, all the planning that goes on to it, and the excitement that's happening that week.
The NTC is a big undertaking, but like I said before our interview started, it is a well-oiled machine. How that's happened, I don't know, I can't remember. 60 some years now, probably Altamont has hosted it, so it's pretty much goes off like clockwork, and that's because of the multiple people that have a hand in it and just do their job, and that they're going to take care of it. And big shout out, people don't realize our secretary at the high school. When it was Deb Winters, she did a lot of it, and now that it's Nikki Tedrick, they take on a brunt of it, and the time that they put in, way months before the tournament even starts. So the atmosphere, you've been there.
Gosh, it's awesome. I mean, Saturday night especially. Yeah,
the semifinal games on Friday night, usually the place is packed, and Saturday night it is. It's, for some of the kids in our, in the NTC, that's their big time thing is being and playing in that tournament. So it's fortunate that and it's neat that we play or in a community where basketball is kind of a big deal, and people come and support it. And I will tell you what I've learned is that we've added new teams like Central A&M and some of the teams from the SIC that are coming to us, and they all are the nostalgia of Altamont Community's gymnasium and getting to play there. So if someone hasn't ever been to the NTC tournament on a Friday or Saturday night, I highly recommend it. It's well worth $5.
I look forward to it a lot because of the crowds and because of the amount of people that talk about it, and it's just a great time, great week in general. Are you in touch with some of your former teammates and players in high school and college?
Yes, probably not as much as I'd like to be, just because then it's like a new chapter and you have new people coming in your life. But Facebook helps make that a little bit more easy. Kids people that I played with and teammates that I had are still my classmates. So obviously at class reunions and shoots and fests and things like that are paths cross. My college teammates more so on Facebook. I was fortunate. Well, to be honest with you, I've been fortunate my whole life. I'm just being blessed with God surrounding me with really great people, starting with my mom and dad and my 11 brothers and sisters, all the way up to today, But the kids that I got to play with at college, there's some amazing people. Unfortunately, one of my teammates just this week lost her husband to fight against cancer, and
oh no.
So you live with these people for 4 years basically, and then they are your family. So so yes, absolutely. And then kids that I coached, it's always fun to talk to them. And it's interesting when we get together that most of the time things that they talk about really aren't the games. It's the times off the court that they got to be with each other. So
at what age did you become interested in playing sports?
I don't know. I was the nerd kid. I love watching sports, and I don't know why or who instilled that in me. 7, 8 years old. I don't know. We played Little League, and back then everybody played was Little League baseball. So I guess the first time I probably would play was I was 7 or 8, and our Little League team we had the Geckner infield because I had a brother and sister playing every spot in the infield. So I guess as early as that, and I never stopped. Probably just watching sports on TV is probably what I did more than any other girl probably did my age at that time.
Since you played, how has the game changed?
A lot, in all the sports, volleyball, basketball, and softball that I played. But for basketball, the speed of the game, obviously, and on the girls' side, probably more so, is just the individual skill level that each player has. You know, when I played, you know, I was a decent player, but, you know, that's because I was really interested in it, and I bounced a ball every day, probably out on the rocks. And other kids didn't do that. Now, all the kids, you know, not all, but most kids, everybody's doing it. So the skill level, which has really cleaned up the girls' game and made it more enjoyable and more entertaining to watch. So with softball, and the same thing with softball and volleyball, I think the skill and the speed that they're both, like especially volleyball is being played, it's a totally different game than when I played it.
What advice would you give to younger kids about playing sports?
I think that there's so many lessons that you can learn. Sports is just a gateway of preparing you for life, and I really feel that's what I tell my coaches that are under me. You know, that's our job. You know, teach them set X's and O's, but you are preparing them for the next chapter of their life, which is being in the workforce. And if we can teach them to compete at a sporting event or scholastic ball or anything like that, then they're going to know how to compete in the world. And I would say to young people that if you can be involved in stuff, being involved in stuff as much as you can, so you can learn some lifelong skills. But there's a great balance with that. I love sports, but sports aren't the number one thing going on in my life. And probably one of the greatest lessons that are quotes that I remember is from my dad, who really wasn't a very big sports guy, and he just remembered what sports were invented for. And that's always humbled me and kept me grounded of just where in the pecking order sports is supposed to be in your life, you know. But and that same thing maybe for kids, you know, dream big, and, you know, don't be afraid to fail, but, you know, put your heart out there. If you're going to do something, put your heart on the line and really go for it.
So you mentioned your role models and who's helped you along the way and whatnot. So I wanted to kind of talk about what has sports done to change your life, Peggy?
Well, it's put me where I'm at because of sports and the involvement that I had in it, and the drive that you know, when I went through high school, I played sports. I didn't have a job. My brothers and sisters all give me a hard time because this is the first job I've ever had. You know, all of them had to work and go to jobs, and I was fortunate enough to get to play. And I'll be honest, back then, I think my dad at one point in time told my mom that she has to pick one sport to be in, and I think my mom championed for me, and she talked him into letting me continue to do it. And because he did, I got my education paid for, I got my master's paid for. It's my livelihood. It pays for what all the things that we like to do is for our families. So it's been very impactful. And then again, the network of people friendships and family that you get to meet along the way. So,
Peggy, in closing, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Peggy, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you very much.